Friday night live stream gets underway. Hi, everybody. It's Joe Chaffee on this end of the week, January 4th, 2019. I decided today was Fridays are usually a good day to move the live stream up to 6 o'clock versus 7 o'clock because it's a Friday night and folks are usually out doing something. I also wanted to start it an hour early tonight to bring in some of my viewers from Europe, and I do have some, particularly in England and Ireland, but there are a few others in other areas of Europe, and there's some very interesting weather going on impacting Central and Southern Europe at the moment in one fashion, also impacting Western and Northern Europe in another. And this is all part of the process of the polar vortex split. So I want to spend a little bit of time tonight at the beginning explaining what is going on in Europe and what will be going on as a result of this major split that's occurred in the vortex in the stratosphere. It's splitting up in three pieces, and we already starting to see some impact, mainly because the main polar vortex, even before the split, was driving the weather colder in parts of Europe, and now it's going to get extended, and it is also going to be spreading eventually to areas to the west. So I'm going to we're going to start off with today's initial European analysis of the upper air. And by the way, this is also playing a role in our weather here because there's a big blocking high that is sitting near England and Ireland. That blocking high has been there for the last couple of weeks. It is coinciding with the weather pattern that is happening across the United States with the Pacific flow and the Pacific jet, which we're going to get to. Now, this upper high is keeping the coldest air away from England and Ireland and in through parts of well, at least the western part of Germany, through France and Spain. The real cold air has been driving down from the north around a very deep trough that extends from in Siberia southwestward into the Mediterranean Sea. So you have this northeasterly flow that's running down toward the Mediterranean and bringing down some very, very cold air and some snow in parts of southern Italy that normally don't see snow and sometimes can go quite a long time without seeing it. I was looking at some of the temperatures, for example, in Rome right now, as of 6 o'clock U.S. Eastern Time in the United States. I believe it's 11 o'clock or midnight in Rome now. It's a 6-hour difference. It is 32. It's 32 in Naples, which is in southern Italy on the Mediterranean coast. Bari on the Adriatic side is at 39 because they're getting a wind probably coming in from off the water that's helping the temperatures out a bit. I don't know exactly where that airport is, if it's near the coast or if it's inland. But Palermo, which is in Sicily. Now, Sicily is it's a very, very warm place. At 37. I mean, that is really bone-chilling cold, and they've had snows on the beaches in southern Italy, as I said, in places where they normally don't have it. And that's the result of this deep upper air trough. We're looking at the roughly the 18,000 foot level here, and that is driving the cold air, but it's also keeping that cold air, the western edge of that cold air is not far enough west to impact England, Ireland, and as I said, Germany, France, Spain, Portugal. It's dry, though, with that upper high. One of the things that upper high has done is that it's basically cut off the regular, what I would call the train of Atlantic storms that moves across and impacts them on a fairly regular basis. But all of this, of course, is being driven by the well-telegraphed, well-advertised, well-modeled split in the polar vortex in the stratosphere. We're looking way up where planes fly, 6 miles up and higher. Usually this is dominated by one big low and one big high. And of course the positions of that low and the high kind of dictate where the lower level pattern is going to be, or the extent and the strength of that lower level pattern. But the splitting of this polar vortex into three pieces, and I've drawn a map. I'm using the GFS here from 9 days from now. It splits from one vortex into three. One that goes into Siberia and northeastern Europe. A second smaller vortex settles in southwestern Europe over Spain and France, and extends down even into North Africa. And the third, well, the other vortex that's of importance, of course, is the one that settles over North America. What has been really interesting to me, you know, while this whole split process was about to happen, we saw weather models splitting and changing from run to run. It split on one run, didn't quite split in another, moved it in one place versus another place on another run. Now that the split is underway and just about done, we are seeing the models being very, very consistent with where they run after run after run into where they're taking these upper lows. Now, if you follow the flow, I've got those dark arrows looking at Europe, for example. This would eventually argue, and there's always a lag time, by the way, so what happens in the stratosphere, it takes a while for it to work down in the lower atmosphere, but you do see the flow across northern Russia, northern Siberia, across northern Europe, this sort of easterly flow at that level of the atmosphere. So the idea here is that it would dictate a colder flow of air in the lower atmosphere developing as this change in that upper atmospheric pattern reaches down and works its magic down in the lower atmosphere. So two areas of impact out of this, Europe and the impact on North America. There's still questions here with regards to the impact on North America because of other factors that are going on, and we're going to take a look at those as well. But still focusing here on Europe, we are looking at the upper air. I've jumped like way ahead here. So this is now going out in about a little less than 2 weeks' time. And I've noticed that the models have been fairly consistent with this idea. But if we go back to that first map that I showed you, which is what the upper air looks like now, with this deep trough that runs from Siberia down into the Mediterranean, and then this big blocking high that's over Ireland and England, keeping the weather for you folks there relatively calm and relatively dry. Big changes are coming because the pattern now, that upper high is forecast to break down. And it's going to break down sooner rather than later, so there will be events going on in the interim in the process of getting to this. And this is where you would wind up seeing your colder air shifting westward into Western Europe and into Northwestern Europe, and also over England and Ireland. You actually wind up with a little bit of a ridge that builds from Africa across the Mediterranean into Italy and down into Greece. And there you probably will see a little bit of a break from the cold air. And that cold air, by the way, is and the snow is also occurring in areas from Italy eastward across Greece and even on into Turkey. This is very cold and dynamic pattern that is going on over in Europe. Now, with this transition of weather that is happening, we are going to see, I'm going to just back this up to where we are at the moment. The upper high, this is the actual surface weather. So the upper high sitting right over southwestern England, and that covers the Western Europe and points northward, keeping things quiet. You can see where it actually is snowing, extending from with that trough from Siberia. You've got a storm that is running eastward out of the Ukraine and actually dropping southeastward here, moving through the weekend. Now watch what happens with an Atlantic storm that basically comes over the top of Scotland, moves north of Scotland, and then drops southeastward into northwestern Europe. And with all that cold air that starts to come into play, you start to see snow throughout Germany and into France, and then eventually making its way down into the Alps. Then as we get that bigger pattern change later on in the forecast period, you are going to eventually get into a pretty cold pattern here in about, let's say, beginning in about day 10 or 11. So we're talking around January 13th, 14th, a transition over to colder air that I think has an opportunity to bring snow into parts of England and Ireland, getting those winds coming down over the North Sea and bringing snows to parts of England and Ireland. After that, the Atlantic train is open, so it looks like we're getting system after system coming in with cold air and chances for snow going forward toward the, we're now at the point of January 20th, assuming, of course, that the models stay the same, which they're not in that long range. We're going to see the models adjust in terms of the specifics. But I think the overall pattern here that is setting up for Europe is quite clear in my opinion, and we are you are going to see some very interesting weather unfold over the next couple of weeks. The quiet and calm that has been sitting over England and Ireland is going to last for a few more days before that upper high breaks down. It's just some fairly cold air that at least late in the period here from the old model run was emanating from Greenland southeastward across into England and Ireland late, and of course the action continues even on the mainland in Europe with ample amounts of cold air. So very, very interesting developments happening with the polar vortex split on the European side. And here's the snow, by the way. This is the GFS snow forecast. This is only going out 10 days, so this takes you to a week from Monday. Now, I wouldn't really necessarily focus on the literal numbers. I mean, some of the numbers here, the snow amounts are in centimeters. So you're going to look at this map, and you can, by the way, access these maps on your own if you go to tropicaltidbits.com. But if you look at some of these print numbers in the 40, 45 centimeter range, I mean, that's basically up to 2 feet. But notice there's quite a bit of accumulating snow being indicated up and down Italy and into Sicily, and also over Sardinia. You've got some snows popping up later in the forecast period, of course, when you get into Spain and Germany, and just a little bit of snow in England and Ireland and up into Scotland. But the main change for England, Ireland, and Scotland, I think, happens after the 14th of January. So it'll be a little bit later in the forecast period. And of course, while all of this is going on, we can transition back to the United States, because one of those vortices is going to be over North America. But we have a couple of issues as far as the surface weather is concerned that we still have to kind of work through and see where it takes us. And I showed you yesterday, and I'm bringing this back up today so that we can give it some context to the weather model runs that we saw today on the GFS and on the European. But one of the issues that's been the case for the last couple of weeks now is that we've had what I refer to, and many people refer to in the weather world, as the fire hose jet, the Pacific fire hose jet, which sometimes lines up like this, where it's kind of like a ruler across the entire Pacific Ocean with winds blowing from west to east. It's all Pacific air coming in, relatively mild Pacific air that comes into the west coast. There's no polar connection, so that Pacific moisture and Pacific air floods the Canadian Northwest. And I think the only thing that's kept it from being a blowtorch here in the east, as we've been saying, is the fact that you've got that big blocking high in England, so it's creating a slightly negative NAO. The overall profile in the Atlantic for a slightly negative NAO is probably keeping it from getting too warm in the Northeast. But with respect to what we've been seeing today on the weather models, we've been looking for clues that this Pacific fire hose jet is going to be breaking down. And indeed, it continues to show up. It's been kind of incremental from day to day, where we see it a little bit more each day. And I've been kind of looking for that to happen. I've been anticipating all along that this was going to be a very, very slow grinding process. The European has been one of the models that has been probably the most resistant to this breakdown, and I'm showing it today because it is catching up to something that the GFS has been indicating, that this fire hose jet is breaking down. And if you look at the last picture I showed you here, the difference between the structure of the jet stream here, which is for this coming Monday, you can see the almost straight line flow from west to east across the Pacific. You've got troughs along the way, but in terms of the movement of air is moving straight west to east. Some of it is getting deflected up toward the Aleutians and then coming back down, and then but ultimately it's just a straight west to east flow with these weather systems and with the jet stream. But when we go to 10 days from now on the European, you see much more amplitude that develops with the trough kind of migrating back westward in the Aleutians. You get a ridge that builds from Hawaii up into the Canadian Northwest, and this cuts off that fire hose, and it allows the flow in Canada to begin to repair itself somewhat, where a ridge builds up into northwest Canada. You start to get some ridging there, and that creates more of a colder flow of Canadian air to come down into the eastern part of the United States. We have been saying all along, by the way, that is going to be also very incremental in terms of how the cold air coming in. I think starting with a shot of cold air, a transient shot of cold air that comes in on Sunday, each one of these shots of cold air that follows should be a little colder and a little longer lasting than the one before it. So just bear that in mind when we move ahead. Again, it's a stair-step grinding process of getting all these chess pieces to move around. And with respect to the European, when we get to the overall weather pattern in North America, this is what it is now forecasting it to look like in 9 days, which is actually, it's a much colder look than what we certainly have now. You can see that the flow is actually somewhat split. You've got systems coming in, what appears to be a southern part of the jet stream, but you also have a separate northern jet that is getting stronger. Back in early December, that northern jet was around and prominent, and even into the middle and latter part of November. So we're seeing that northern jet now coming back to where it is bringing down some colder Canadian air. It's not crazy cold, but at the very least, it brings temperatures back down to normal or a little bit below normal. And again, remember, it's going to be in stages, I believe. I think we're getting there. The European model has been the most resistant in trying to move this pattern around, and it seems to be coming into a much better agreement with the GFS, which has been all along being much more insistent that we're going to see this pattern very slowly change in the longer term. So the European being on board is another checkbox, another check in the box when you are trying to figure out where this pattern change is going and to what extent will it be going to. Now we'll move on to current weather, and you can see what's going to be impacting our weather this weekend here in the east and impacting the east right now. We've got this tropical flow coming out of the Gulf of Mexico, sending moisture up the eastern seaboard. Clouds have reached up into the northeast. There's no cold air, so except for the fact that there's probably a little bit of cold air trapped at the surface in some places, say in the Hudson Valley, we've got a couple of winter weather advisories up, but nothing really to write home about here. And then you've got the upper low, which is well defined on the satellite loop tonight. You can see the spinning there in the Tennessee Valley. And this is all going to be probably a 1 inch to inch and a half rain producer in my neck of the woods from eastern Pennsylvania to southern New England. And that is going to be playing itself through, and weather systems will be moving along, getting more moisture coming in to the Pacific Northwest. But it's quiet in Texas. In Oklahoma, by the way, if you look over Oklahoma, you see that white patch that doesn't really change very much, except if you look closely, it deteriorates somewhat. That's actually snow cover there. Very interesting to see, but that's a snow cover. Parts of Oklahoma seeing more snow in the last couple of days than they've seen in the last couple of years. For those of you complaining about no snow, Oklahoma City, for example, is a city that does get some snow in the wintertime, not a whole heck of a lot, but it gets snows in most winters. So a couple of years of subpar action should at least temper the temper tantrums of the folks in my neighborhood that seem to be just losing their minds over the fact that there hasn't been any snow happening yet. And of course, you got this more action, as I said, moisture flooding in into the northwest. The radars tonight, we do have a marginal risk of severe weather for Florida, and that is showing up. There are some thunderstorms here, but right now we don't see any. We've seen a couple of severe thunderstorm warnings. Last I checked, I didn't notice that there was any watch box up. There wasn't when I checked about 30 minutes ago. And further to the north, we're also getting some stronger, isolated and some stronger thunderstorms on up off the South Carolina coast and in coastal North Carolina because of where the warm sector sets up. And then you see the upper low that's driving all this. Pretty odd that, again, you look across much of the country, you think it would be snowing somewhere here in the east, or in the northeast anyway, but it's not. And out in the west, at the moment on the radar, it's pretty quiet. You've got some showers down in southernmost California coming up from the north, and some precip beginning to move into the northwest. And we do have a few areas in California and up into the northwest that have some winter weather advisories and winter storm warnings that are up. So let's come back home and go to the U.S. map. We're probably only going to have a limited amount. Oh, actually, we do have the whole 18 ZGFS. Okay, good. I'm looking at this for the first time with you, so I'm going to describe it and try to analyze things at the same time. I'm at the end of the period here, so we'll go backwards. One of the things, by the way, we were talking yesterday about the fact that there was a tropical. They were monitoring a system out in the east central Pacific for the possibility of tropical storm development. It hasn't really become better organized and probably is running out of time at this point. But the moisture from this, and you see it here in the lower left, is running northeastward and moves into Arizona, New Mexico, Utah, and into western parts of Colorado. So there probably will be some significant snows there in some areas. Meanwhile, here in the east, here comes our rain for tonight into Saturday evening. This is going to pull away and weather conditions improve on Sunday, but now we're going to get this shot of colder air that comes in for Sunday night and Monday. Meanwhile, in the west, busy with these winter storm warnings that we have up in the mountains of eastern and northeastern California, and then going northward, you're seeing some rain and some heavier snows in those areas. In the east, we're turning cold and dry Sunday night into Monday morning in New England, and down into at least New Jersey and southern Pennsylvania. We'll be seeing temperatures in the 20s and low 30s. You get further north, you'll see temperatures in the teens and a bit colder as that high moves into southeastern Canada. We're going to have a couple of fast-moving weather systems coming across on Monday and on Tuesday. The first one on Monday is really kind of a dying low with a warm front. And ahead of it, there might be a quick burst of snow that'll occur in upstate New York and into New England. I don't think it's going to extend down to me, to my area. Maybe in the Hudson Valley north of Route 84, and perhaps a brief round of snow or sleet at the start across northern Pennsylvania. But that should be about it. And then by Tuesday morning, it's out, and we have a second low, and this is going to mark the arrival of the next cold high coming down, which is going to be dropping into the Dakotas. That moves through with maybe a rain shower Tuesday evening, and here comes the colder shot for Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. And this shot is going to be a little colder and last a little longer than the shot before it, as will be part of the trend. So that high moves in. Now, here's where the models start to get a little, they kind of spread out a bit, which you would think that would be the case. We're out almost to day 7. There will be a number of shortwave troughs running around. The European did something today I really wish it didn't do, and that was it made a snowstorm for late next weekend in the east at the end of its 10-day forecast period. And the reason why I say I wish it hadn't done that is for the snow lovers at least, is because the fact that it's done it now means that when we run the next run tonight, it will take it away. But I think the better way to look at this is the fact that you are going to have multiple streams in play at later next week. The northern part of the jet stream is going to start flexing. The southern part of the jet stream bringing systems in from the Pacific is already flexing. And the GFS kind of resolves this, where if you look at this, it actually isn't that far off from what the European did today. It's got more of the northern jet seemingly involved here for later next week. But behind it is another shot and an even colder shot of air that moves in for next weekend and the first part of the week of January 14th. I think that the fact that we are seeing models getting to where every run, even if it's only a little bit, as we go into the long range, a little bit colder, a little bit colder, a little bit colder. I honestly believe the colder part of this equation here, I think, is going to be easier to accomplish than the storm part of it. That, I think, is something that always is going to be far more of a dicey proposition, because there are just far more variables to deal with in terms of the short waves running around, their impacts on each other, and so on. But this is a pretty interestingly cold shot on this late afternoon run, and we're only talking now, we're into day 8. If you remember, we've been trying to get these things to show up. We were seeing them at day 13, 14, 15, and 16, or in some runs in between, maybe not seeing them at all. Now we're starting to see some of that colder air coming into the day 8, 9, 10 time frame. So I think that's, again, that would be a promising indicator for those of you waiting for cold weather. And of course, now we're into the part where we go beyond days 9 and 10, and we do have weather systems moving across. The cold air issue is something that we're going to have to measure as we get down the road. But in terms of the overall upper air trend, I think, at least from the standpoint of what the models have done today, it seems as if this polar vortex split is having its impact. The fact that the Pacific jet, that roaring Pacific jet, is going to be changing. Looking at the GFS here, now we're only into day 5. We still have that roaring jet in play, but as we get deeper into the forecast period, we do see some signs here where it winds up getting cut off. That screaming jet into the Pacific gets cut off to some degree, and you've got much more of an established northern jet getting involved. So this is all going to be very, very interesting to see how it plays out, obviously. And we've got a long way to go to watch this whole pattern evolve. This is the last day, and again, this is highly speculative, and it's not going to look this way necessarily, but it's interesting how, we're getting this sort of, if you look up in the polar region, this would be the signature of that split polar vortex, where you're going to get higher than normal pressures trying to develop across the polar regions, displacing the jet stream further and further south. So for those of you who are if you're advocating for the pattern change, I think this is another check mark in your box that it is going to happen. Okay, again, it's all about patience, and it's all about patience, and it's all about even more patience and watching this very grinding process just happen day by day by day, run by run by run. Very, very the emotional frustration for snow lumbers. I kind of get it. It's already reached temper tantrum stage. So you have to kind of figure out how to contain it. Okay, I mean, really, that's what it all boils down to. Let's see, what after the split. Well, Michael K, we have seen winters starting later and lasting later into the months of March and into April. Perhaps that's where this is going, where we are going to have another one of these years where it wasn't the case last year. Last year was everybody's got skewed memories on last year. That last year was a very cold 6 weeks, followed by a very warm 6 weeks, which took us to March 1st, and then it was followed by a very stormy and cold 4-week period. This one is playing maybe more like 14-15, which started out not that different, where it was basically on the mild side going into the first half of January, and then the bottom fell out with cold to brutal cold from late January right through the month of March. I don't know, honestly, honestly, I don't know where this is going much beyond the 2-week time frame. I know where we are headed in general. That's where I've already stated that, but I have no idea. Is this going to take us into March? Is it going to take us, into early April in terms of the impact of this split? I don't know. I can only tell you that we are seeing the tendency in recent years for winters to start a little later and then last into the March and early April timeframe. Steve LaPointe, thank you very much for hitting Super Chat tonight. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you. Johnny Quest, the Southern brings up the Southern Oscillation Index. I don't follow the SOI. There's so much of this stuff, you can't follow it all. There's almost no time. Or if you do follow stuff, there are times when I don't look at certain things for days. But a few people have been talking about the SOI index, the Southern Oscillation Index, which is another one of these indices like the North Atlantic Oscillation, the East Pacific Oscillation. So you can guess that the Southern Oscillation Index is dealing with issues south of the equator. It has been, the correlation with that is when that index is positive, it's not good for cold and snow in the eastern part of the United States. Well, that index has gone negative. Actually, Anthony points out it's a index based on the observed sea level pressure differences between Tahiti and Darwin, Australia, and it's gone negative. So when the SOI is negative, it favors cold and snowier weather into the eastern part of the United States. That's another index that has now come on board with the idea that we're going to see this pattern shift. Scott Briller points out, here's an interesting statistic: Oklahoma City, Tucson, Albuquerque, and Charlotte, North Carolina, all have in common that they've had more snow so far this year, and in some places a significant amount, than Boston has. Boston's only had 0.2 of an inch of snow. So even New York City, even Washington, D.C. is ahead of Boston right now. There's a bit of a hole that because of what happened in November, a bit of a snow hole has developed in eastern Massachusetts, and that area has been, was neglected by the November snow, and they've missed out on a number of snows that have been falling in interior New England. So Boston getting a bit of the thumbs down as far as snow is concerned. Anthony Orr, you bringing up also the Madden-Julian oscillation. I talked to Bill Goodman, my friend from the Weather Service in Upton, and we've had him on our live streams before. One of the things that he thinks is very important in the next couple of weeks, the Madden-Julian Oscillation deals with tropical wind oscillations going on in the West Pacific. We've got this El Nino going on, and the oscillation is going into phase. It's in phase 7 right now, which is a warm phase for us. There are 8 phases of it. It's in phase 7. It is forecast to go into phase 8. 8, 1, and 2 are bullish phases for cold and snow in the eastern part, but in the Northeast or in the eastern part of the United States. And one of the things he says that's important is that Madden-Julian oscillation has to kind of couple itself with that El Nino. If it can do that, it would be very bullish for storminess in the eastern part of the United States as we get through the next couple of weeks and beyond. So that's another element we're going to have to watch for to see if the Madden-Julian oscillation and the El Nino couple in terms of how they're behaving, and that would increase the probability of snow activity in the east. On the other hand, there's always the chance that they don't couple. There's always the chance that the models may be overzealous in breaking down that screaming Pacific jet because of the El Nino that seems to be weak but strengthening and covering much of the Pacific. So it's not a done deal by any means. So let's remember that we have to. It's one thing to have the models do it, but we've got to get it to the point where it's in a reliable short-term range that we feel very, very confident that it's going to happen, and then we go from there. Just running back, I want to make sure we have a few of my regular folks that pop up from time to time. Doug Crum, good to see you on board. Ashante Stevens, nice to see you. Again, Ashante Stevens, your question I mentioned earlier about what the European did today. The models all have various short waves in the east during that time frame that the European revs up a system off the east coast. In fact, there's no reason why I can't actually show it to you, so why don't we, because I want to give it some context here, because it's there on one run and gone in the next. But let me just bring up the European. I'll put the surface. This is as best that we can do with respect to the European. But this is what the European has for next weekend, with low pressure coming from across the southern stream off the North Carolina coast, and it blows it up to a 985 low sitting southeast of Cape Cod. It would be cold enough because there's this cold high that's coming down late next week, so there would probably be cold air, and this would be a mostly snow event. Okay, it's 10 days out on here, so we know, as I said, the next run, it may have it gone. I think the thing to look at is the upper air, which is more important. And here is, just going into this, you can, and it's probably better if we use the wider view. Let's see if the US view will cover this. And then I'll show you the GFS, and here's the issue. The models have multiple short waves. If you look at the European here next Friday, for example, you've got a short wave in the southern stream from New Mexico down into the Baja Peninsula. You've got a short wave up in the northern plains. You've got one off the east coast. You've got something coming in off the west coast. The European takes that northern stream short wave and starts to try to phase it with the south. And you can see what happens as you go into Sunday and Monday, and it winds up with this, somewhat dynamic looking upper air cutoff low that is east of New Jersey, south of Nantucket by the time we get to next Monday. Okay, that's all fine and dandy, but the European on this run timed out these short waves about as perfectly as you can time them out. Now, if you look at the GFS, for example, it has a bit of a different look. It has the same short waves running around, but it already has them kind of phased across the plains down into New Mexico. It's already gotten together, and while it does get dynamic, it's more with how it reacts with the northern energy. See how there's this northern shortwave that drops down and wraps up into over the Great Lakes. So this winds up with a much different solution, which we just looked at, where it's got more of its energy in the north rather than the south, and with cold air coming in behind it. So when you look at all the models, they all have the puzzle pieces. The European just happened to time these puzzle pieces out in such a way that it produces a storm where it produces it. The GFS times them out differently. The parallel GFS, this is the new parallel GFS, so we can take a look at what it does. So here's where the new parallel GFS kind of keeps those short waves, looks like it's keeping them rather separate, which would lead to a whole different solution. So why don't we take the parallel surface and see what it did. So let's back up so we can see what this is going to be the new operational run anyway. But here's Monday, that warm front that goes by. Late Tuesday into early Wednesday morning, you get a cold front. Here comes a cold shot of air for Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. The high, this is as far out as we can go. So we really can't see beyond Friday yet, but you can see the surface here Thursday night with high pressure in the east, and that cold shot for Wednesday, Thursday, into Friday. So we're just going to have to go back one run on the old parallel GFS and take it through. And here's where the old parallel GFS also has energy coming eastward, but it looks like it leaves the southern energy behind, and it's more in the north than anything else. So you see what the problem is. And the European has been notorious very recently, in particular, with having these storms pop up that wind up being not there on the very next run, or at worst a couple of runs away. So I would just be very careful putting any kind of faith in what you're seeing now. The more important takeaway for me is the fact that you're seeing the models getting colder, and you're seeing the models showing energy running around with a northern jet and a more active southern jet. And that is all you should probably take away from all of this. Jason SEO Smith, my buddy from England, it's all lining up for a record snow event across the UK and many parts of Europe, especially February on. Hey, with that polar vortex split, Jason, you're in pretty good shape there. I mean, already seeing the impact across southern and central Europe, where it's cold and snowy now, particularly down in Italy, for example. But yes, I would agree with you. I think this is going to eventually be bullish for Western and Northwestern Europe, and also for England and Ireland. I'd be curious, by the way, Jason, because obviously you know about this more than I do, but overall in the last 10 or 15 years, has there been a general increase in the amount of cold and snow events in England and Ireland? I'd be curious to hear your perspective on that. So if you are still on and you can type out an answer, fine. If not, just message me on Facebook, or I'll repeat the question to you on Facebook, because that's something that has crossed my mind, especially in lieu of last year with the big snowstorm in Dublin that happened in March. This is all piqued my curiosity to see if there's some sort of is there a coupling between what's going on in Europe and what might be going on in the eastern part of the United States. Ethan Kerr, you are that's the snow map, and whichever one you look at and the algorithms that it uses. I know I saw the patch of 20 plus over me, 24 plus over me, or whatever that was. But again, it's all lovely in fantasy land for the snow lovers. But you're right. The next run tonight, it may not even be there. And again, it's all about the timing of the short waves. I want to get it cold first. I want to see that whole pattern play out, get the cold air in here, and then we'll worry about next weekend when we get closer. But there is a March 2018. Prior to that, you'd have to go back to 1984 for a large snow event for the Southwest UK. Gotcha. But in general, I'm just wondering if there's been a general trend to snowier winters in the last 15 or 20 years in the UK, or has it been about the same as it's always been if you go back to, say, the 80s or the 70s? Let's see. Okie AG was in Buffalo in 1977. Oh boy, that was a huge lake effect snow year for Buffalo, and in Scotland in UK in 1977. Talk about snow and the last plane. Wow, amazing. Okay. Let's one man's opinion. Appreciate your opinion. You are not a snow fan, obviously, and that's okay. Some folks like it, some points don't. Steve LaPointe. I do like snow, but that's and I admit to that fact. I am a snow lover, except except if I have to drive in it back and forth to work. I would prefer that it would do it at a time where I don't have to drive. But I learned a long time ago that my personal like for it and my forecasting part of it are two different things, and I keep a very unbiased, even keel when it comes to this. I might be a bit of a snow weenie at heart, but when it comes to doing my work and getting and forecasting, it's a straight shoot, unbiased look at everything that is going on. Chris Alley, you have a great weekend, and that actually is a good indicator for me, because I am going to have to put an end to it. Frank Sinatra, the Pacific Jet, showing signs of breaking down. If you missed it, if you jumped on late, just go back. It was covered in the first 20 minutes of the live stream, so you can watch it on the replay. Thanks everybody for being here tonight. I know Friday nights are always, it's the one night in the week that I usually get a smaller audience, and I can understand why, because it's a Friday night. So I just want to at least mention the fact that I do have, and I make it as big as possible, I do have a weather platform set up on Patreon. It's a crowdfunding platform. It is a way that you can support my channel. I do live streams just for Patreon members, along with the weather posts just for Patreon members. Plus, you get all of my other website stuff and access to. There's an app on Patreon as well. It's a subscription site, folks. It's just $2 a month, and it does go a long way in supporting my channel and supporting what I do. So if you are interested in having a really full weather experience, consider joining the Patreon platform. There is some free stuff on there if you want to take a look. If you are if you are in the northern New Jersey, New York City, Long Island, southern Connecticut, and lower Hudson Valley area, mainly south of Route 84, you might want to consider, if you've got an Android device, here is my app that is available on Google Play, and that is absolutely free. You can download it, and even if you're not in that area, by the way, I do put a lot of long-range posts up there that speak in generalities about the weather in the eastern part of the United States or in other parts of the United States, or in fact today where I wrote about what's going on in Europe as well as what's going on here. So you might want to have it just so that you can have easy access to it. So there's the link on Google Play. One last way you can support my channel is if you shop on Amazon. I do have a straight link that you can use, and if you do your searching and shopping from this link, Amazon throws me back a little bit of coin from their pocket for a few cigars for me. We're a participant in the Amazon Services LLC Associates program, which is an affiliate advertising program designed to provide a means for us to earn fees by linking to Amazon.com and its affiliated sites. Scott Briller, you've got the flu. Go back to bed, take care of yourself, and get better. For everyone else, have a great Friday night. We'll be live streaming at some point over the weekend, although I can't exactly tell you when, but I will get on there at some point. So have a great weekend otherwise, and we'll hopefully see you at some point, either Saturday or Sunday or both.